Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games, where we're going to move swiftly on to the next series. It's Bulgaria versus Spain. Both of these teams also at 3-1, both very keen to qualify for the top 16.
Yeah, I believe Spain was a perfect record until quite recently. Were they? Did they lose to Italy last week, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe it was, yes. So they were in a very good spot to be qualifying through. Still haven't quite got their spot at the top 16 like we just saw the UK take, much to our happiness, I'm sure. Although it does put Dan Gaskin a bit higher in the standings, which we're not happy with.
Much higher than me, which I'm very not happy with. Let's take a look at these teams, though. See those familiar faces for Bulgaria. Django, Freaky, Best Uda EU, and Silent Storm. For Spain, Riku97, Aka Wonder, who I would say is the star of this lineup, Delsum, and Jacobo.
Yeah, but on Spain, I'd say it's pretty much an all-star lineup, actually. We always see Jacob on Twitch fairly high up the Hearthstone standings in terms of popularity. He's a very popular Spanish streamer. Whereas on the other side for Bulgaria, a lot less well-known. I would say Django is probably the most well-known, at least to me, player on their team. He's always in the various Twitch chats, hanging out with all the players I'll be watching, like Tyler Ball Control, all those guys. And I believe it's his first playoffs coming up this weekend with the Europe playoffs as well. And in my book, if you can even qualify to playoffs, especially Europe, with it being such a high points threshold, you're already a very good player.
That might make things a little bit difficult for Bulgaria this week, actually, because I remember from a conversation I had with Django weeks ago, this may have changed since then, but back then Django was saying to me, look, I'm doing a lot of the preparation, I'm doing a lot of the work leading into the Hearthstone Global Games. You know, my team are helping, but I'm definitely pulling most of the weight. And if Django's busy with playoffs, that could be a struggle this week.
Yeah, and that is always the risk, isn't it, when you have one star player on your team. They can't do all the hard work themselves, which I'm not saying he necessarily does do. I'm sure the other members on the team are putting in their effort, but when you do have one player who does appear to be the most consistent, probably the highest level player, it's dangerous to put all your eggs in one basket.
Should we take a look at the picks and bans for this series? See how this is going to go down.
Both rogues banned away right at the start. Quest Rogue for Bulgaria and Quest Rogue for Spain. Makes a lot of sense, as these are two very control-y lineups compared to most of what we've seen.
The big surprise for me is straight after that when Druid was not picked for Bulgaria. They picked Shaman and Hunter and then had their Druid banned alongside their Warrior. So why Bulgaria wanting to bring Shaman? It's just a regular Shadow Walk, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Well, it's just a good anti-control deck, right? Their first two picks were after the Quest Rogue ban being the best anti-control deck, Death Rattle Hunter and Shadowwalk Shaman, which against the likes of Odd Warrior, Control Mage, some of the slower Druids perhaps, it can do very nicely indeed, because it just has that very strong ultimate win condition.
So banning away the aggro, banning away the Odd Paladin, it does all make sense. Let's take a look though at the important part, how these decks have lined up against one another. We're going to start with Django on the Zoo Warlock versus Delsum on the Malagas Druid.
Yeah, fairly close matchup in my opinion. I think the general consensus is that if played well, Zoo is probably slightly ahead, because although you have some strong anti-aggro tools for the Malagos Druid, especially when they hit Killer Seth, I hate to say it, the Zoo just has too much sustainability at all points in the game, consistently throwing down threats. You don't have enough answers, and even your win condition, while it's unlikely to come up where you're going for lethal and they heal out of range, they do have a little bit of heal, so they are less likely, ever so slightly, to be dying to Malagos with Twig combos.
If I remember rightly, it was the first show match that Fino did since the expansion came out.
So.
Fino does all of these little show matches where they test certain archetypes against other archetypes, and I believe the Zoodog did come out ahead. It's just a lot of the time too much pressure for the Druid to be able to keep up with. Obviously, if this was week one of the expansion, these decks have been tinkered with a little bit since then. However, it's hard to imagine the matchup changing that much.
And also, another thing that probably swings it in the Zoo's favour is that in that show match, it was Hunter Ace and Orange on the Malagos Druid, who are probably two of the best, if not the best Malagos Druid players that we currently have in Hearthstone. And I'm not saying that Spain isn't up to the challenge, but it's Hunter Ace and Orange. They are just the absolute peak of playing this deck.
Okay.
Django clearly finds something funny here. I mean, he's got Soul Infusion into doubling Imp, which is...
That's pretty funny.
Kind of what you're looking for against Druid, right? I said that Keleseth helps, obviously, with a more consistent game plan. It means your removal, or sorry, the enemy's removal is so much weaker because swipes don't kill off any of your minions on their own, plagues don't trade very favorably. So here we do see the Soul Infusion and the doubling Imp is just perfectly fine here for Bulgaria.
I did have a very quick chat with Akawanda earlier today about the team and how they're feeling, and he said to me, after losing that unlosable game last week, Druid versus Warlock, we had to recover, but here we are again with a lot of motivation to qualify. Oh, look at that. Thailand just beat Vietnam 3-2, putting them 3-1 in 4-1? 3-1. 3-2. 3-2, that's how it works. That's how numbers work. Got there eventually.
Which would then mean that Vietnam are eliminated?
That's right. Vietnam are now 2-3, and 3 is a forced drop. So goodbye, Vietnam.
And we're seeing a lot of emotion from both of these players already. Django having a good old chuckle when he got the Soul Infusion into doubling him, and a nice little clapper there from Dalesom as he gets the Wild Growth on 2. Decent hands for both players with the Wild Growth picked up, but it's just pretty obvious here, right, that Django is miles in the lead.
Yep, I would say coining out 2 4/4s on turn 2 is pretty good in most matchups, actually, as Dalesom. He can deal with 1 if he wants to go Spellstone, Moonfire, Hero Power, but that's horrible.
That's really, really, really bad. So what are your alternatives? You go...
Take 8 damage.
Hero Power into Spreading Plague. Spain at this point, I mean, they already need to start thinking, what are our outs to start pulling this back? Because even just Spreading Plague probably doesn't do enough here unless Bulgaria go really wide on the board, which I doubt they'll actually do. I think they'll be focusing a lot on tapping here, making sure the Plague doesn't blow them out of the game. After they obviously play probably Keleseth, Kobold Librarian, I imagine would be what they head for first of all.
Oh, they're doing it. They're actually doing it. The Spellstone, Moonfire, Hero Power. They do not want to be taking 8 damage every turn from next turn. I mean, that's fair enough, but they're going to need something good to get back into this game. They're going to need an immediate nourish or some way of getting to that ultimate infestation.
Yeah.
Like nourish into Malfurion or something.
That's what I'm thinking as well. Maybe a Giggling Inventor, even just a swipe. Like, killing off that 1 minion here does mean on the next turn they can draw to some very strong removal. But it's going to have to be pretty quick because this is an absolute onslaught here from Django, even getting the buffed up Doomguard as well for a little bit of extra surprise push, as Dalesom, even with a Wild Growth on curve, now just has absolutely nothing he can do.
He does have Spreading Plague coming down next turn, and that is something. There are 3 plagues being summoned, probably more. I guess next turn Bulgaria will go something like Voidwalker, Fungal Enchanter. So yeah, actually Spreading Plague will do some work.
But then for Spain, how do they play into that then? Do they Hero Power the Keleseth? That's a really suspicious play.
Everything except Hero Powering the 2-1 is very blatantly obvious as to what's coming up next. So I guess they have to, Hero Power Keleseth, Hero Power Face, and say, hey, we've got Spreading Plague. That's that, really.
Even at this point, the fact that you've thought this long, and if you end up then Hero Powering a 2-1 and doing nothing else, your opponent will probably put you on having Spreading Plague, right? Because what else would you have that you could play but don't play on this turn? As Spain here are thinking, you know what, it's a little bit obvious at this point anyway. We just got to hope they have no choice but to go wide. No Fungalmancer to buff it up afterwards.
Oh, and Saonite Chaingang is actually a pretty great play into the Spreading Plague. They're 3/4s. That's not too bad whatsoever. It's better than Voidwalker, Voodoo Doctor, etc. So there we go. 5 plagues will be summoned, but...
I do like Django having a little bit of a giggle here as he realizes he has gone Soul Infusion into Doubling Imp, into Keleseth, into an on-curve Chain Gang, into Doomguard to probably close this one out. This is... I mean, this is just what Zoo does sometimes. This is why it has these cards like Soul Infusion, like Happy Ghoul, like Keleseth, because while it does decently well most of the time, sometimes it just absolutely destroys its opponent.
Dalsum's certainly feeling the heat down with Team Spain. They are wanting to know just how many of these plagues are going to be dealt with and what can they even do next turn. Is it just Dream Petal Florist? Hope they can play Alex Straza the turn after? That's crazy.
So now that Django has seen a Spreading Plague here, it makes his turn here A little bit more difficult, I suppose, because if there was nothing on the board, you'd just, well, obviously go Doomguard and win the game. But now that he has seen a Plague, maybe he's afraid of a Naturalize coming down on this Doomguard, which could have been drawn off the top for the last couple of turns. And at that point, you'd probably rather have gone wide on the board and heal up with Fungal Enchanter, because there is a little bit less counterplay to that, and then maybe follow up with a Doomguard to just close out the game.
Enchanter was the play that jumped out to me, but now I'm thinking about the Doomguard, and you say, you know, what if it gets naturalized? I'm sort of thinking, does it matter so much? Draw 2 more cards, probably get another Doomguard, Soulfire, something.
It's not great though, right? Because if the game keeps on going long, then it starts to get worse for them. An interesting choice there again as well to go for the Soul Infusion instead of the Voodoo Doctor. They could have guaranteed a charging Doomguard for 8 attack on the following turn if they'd gone Voodoo Doctor instead. This is probably a bit better though, right? Because if there's like a taunt in the way, they obviously don't want an overkill Doomguard here. And the Voodoo Doctor is just a 2-1 that dies to swipe and makes a better second Spreading Plague if by some miracle Dalesome does have the second Plague.
Unfortunately, Dalesome has pretty much nothing. He has Dream Petal Florist, which again is a big risk here because it's very easy for Django to clear up these Plagues just with the board, and he's likely just dead, is he?
It's looking that way at the moment.
Yeah, given with the Doomguard as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dalesome doesn't know there's a Doomguard there, so maybe they have to play as if there is no damage in the hand. They're going to just start by drawing.
Yeah, but I don't think there's much they can get. This hand is, as the Spanish would say, absolute al gente nada.
Is that what they'd say?
I think so, yeah. Oh. Well, I don't know if they would say that, but it means they've got a whole lot of nothing in their hand.
Ah. We always like to learn in the Hearthstone Global Games.
And yet for some reason we never do. But now Doomguard, surely this is lethal at this point. You can go attack, attack. You're always doing a fair bit of overkill actually, aren't you? So maybe the numbers don't quite work out.
I don't think it quite works out.
Oh, that's so unfortunate.
The 1 health Plague is very awkward there.
Yeah, really, really annoying. So then I guess you are actually opening yourself to your opponent, being able to go Giggling Inventor. If they had a Malfurion, maybe that, or a second Plague perhaps, that they're banking on you not being able to kill them, so you then go for the Plague. Tap into health, into Soulfire probably wouldn't do it either, right?
No, I don't think so. I think this is pushing 9 to the face. That was the amount that I counted. Is this maybe more? I envisioned the Doomguard going face.
Even going for just straight up not playing the Voodoo Doctor because they'd rather have nothing on board so that 1 less Scarab would be summoned if a Spreading Plague were there.
Yeah. Spreading Plague would have been powerful for Dalesome here. I mean, Giggling Inventor is okay. It tanks 4 attacks. So Giggling Inventor into what, Branching Paths to gain armor?
I think that's Branching Path.
That's not winning the game though, is it? Like that stalls out 1 more turn, then UI isn't good enough the turn after.
Yeah, so you have to draw something better, right? Like maybe UI, I haven't done the maths exactly. I guess it's basically second Plague, maybe a Naturalize to deal with the Doomguard, stuff like that that you're looking for.
Oh, well, all right, close the door. That'll do it. Blood Knight is a pretty good tech against Giggling Inventor. When it pays off like this, that just has to be lethal.
10, 16, yeah. I think pretty much exactly.
I hadn't counted it, I just very much assumed that Blood Knight did the job. And there you go, Django takes the win there. We said that Zoo was favored, and look at that. That was blisteringly fast. The Druid just couldn't do anything, and it didn't help that on turn, what, 3, 4, the play was Spellstone, Moonfire, Hero Power, Killer 4/4.
It wasn't the worst hand I've ever seen for a Druid. Like, they had the Wild Growth, they had Spellstone, they had Plague. Those are all good cards versus Zoo, but just didn't quite come in the right order. Didn't have that early that early Nourish, perhaps. But again, the perfect hand pretty much there for the Zoo. Well played out for Django as well, I would say. Not being tempted to go for a turn 1 or turn 2 Keleseth, relying on the Doubling Imp because that is the best thing you can do versus Druid, and it worked out well.
Keeping up the pace though, next up we have Shadowwalk Shaman for Bulgaria for Silent Storm versus Aqua Wonder on the Death Rattle Hunter. It's one of those matchups again where we look at eggs and we look at lightning storms and we look at volcanoes and we look at eggs again, and it's just very difficult for the Shaman to clear the Hunter's board.
Yeah, not a whole lot going on for the Shaman, I would say. It's weird because when you actually look at it, like you say we look at all the Shaman's removal cards and it doesn't line up. They do have good cards in this matchup. Like
Sure.
Earthshock is very good. Hex can be very good. Healing Rain can be very good.
Glacier Shard.
Exactly. There are some very good cards in this matchup, but you're just a little bit too slow as the Shudderwock Shaman, I find. And while we do have to always talk about Shudderwock Shaman's ability to make a decent mid-game board through the use of life drinkers and chain gangs, it's significantly worse than anything the Hunter can do. And even if you do have 2 Hexes and an Earthshock in your deck, you have to actually draw them, and you're usually not doing that in time. The Hunter can go for very greedy lines of play, and you usually just lose.
Yeah, there's just so many different ways the Hunter can approach this. Like you said, the mid-range board is so big, you end up with charging, King Crushes on turn 8, thanks to Katharina. All sorts of things come down. Again, the Shaman just can't deal with Lightning Storm. Even if there's one egg in the way, you can't Lightning Storm, so you have to Earthshock the egg first, Hex the egg first, then Lightning Storm, or then Volcano. But then at that point, there's going to be something else in the way. Then cubes come down, and as I mentioned before, Katharina causes a headache. So it's down to the Shudderwock Shaman to, I guess, have the tools and finish and play the Shudderwock on turn 9.
Yeah, it's unlikely for the Shudderwock Shaman to come down on turn 9.
Yeah.
It's such a specific combo to make that happen. What I've been seeing a lot in the global games, actually, is we've been seeing a lot of Death Rattle Hunter being played. Because it's pretty much the only Hunter being played. We're not seeing much Spell Hunter at all. Is when it goes wrong against these control matchups, I find they're not being greedy enough in these matchups. You have the time to play a little bit more heavily for cube on 5/5s or cube on high mains instead of just cubing the egg itself, which is not particularly high value play. It's much quicker tempo play you want to go for in the quicker matchups. Maybe saving the playdeads to go for Katharina or cube instead of just the egg early on. Maybe keeping a Deathstalker Rexar, even though I suppose in this matchup you usually have to play a little bit more aggressively because a slow value line of play won't work. But generally the point I'm trying to make is I think some of these Hunter players could be a little bit more optimistic with their plays and not just trying to smork their opponent down with 2 5/5s. Because while that's good against the aggressive decks and the decks that have less answers, a deck that has Hexes, Lightning Storms, Volcanoes, they can deal with those Devil Swords relatively easily.
I think just generally Death Rattle Hunter is very difficult to play. And it's for that very reason. It's the fact that you really have to play with a completely different style in a different matchup. Sometimes, yeah, coining out the egg as soon as possible, playing both of your playdeads and Terra Scale immediately is the best line in any sort of mirror against any sort of aggressive game. Well, actually, usually, if you can make that start, that's good anyway. But against something like an Odd Warrior, against something like a Shudderwock Shaman, where you do have a little bit more time, like you said, playing dead on a cube that's maybe got Savannah High Mains in it or something, that can be the winning line.
What I've also learnt more and more, the more I see of Hunter, is just how good Houndmaster Shore is. We have seen this completely solo so many matchups here at the Global Games, because not only is it a decent minion in its own right, it's one of those minions that demands an answer that most decks just don't really have at the moment, right? It's usually very big removal or too small removal to get the job done. Like in Odd Warrior, you've got Brawls, you've got Reckless Flurries, you've got Shield Slams, I guess. It's all overkill on just a Houndmaster Shore. You don't want to waste it on just one minion that has to die. And then as the Shudderwock Shaman, do you hex it? You're then not hexing a cube or a High Maid or a Witchwood Grizzly. It gets pretty weird and messy if you are just dealing with one minion, but you kind of have to. Because
again, the Shaman's not really removing anything with AoEs, because I'm sure there'll be an egg or something behind there preventing a Volcano or Lightning Storm from coming out. So yeah, maybe a Hex or Earthshock does have to get used on the shore. As Bulgaria also, they won't be removing any minions with their own minion pressure. It's all reliant on spells. Sound Knight Chain Gangs aren't going to get through a Houndmaster Shore.
They are not indeed. There's the options here for Akawanda. I mean, obviously with the loot order already in hand, we're seeing it is not a Keleseth variant. I'm got to be honest, I'm not entirely sure whether that helps or hinders you in this matchup. I'd have to imagine you'd rather have Keleseth in this matchup. I
think so, yeah.
But then again, if you draw Keleseth on curve every time, you'd rather have it against every single matchup in the game. So that's kind of a moot point, I suppose.
Now Bulgaria, to totem or not to totem?
So why would you not totem because you don't want to bounce back to hand with Grumble. I think worrying about hand size issues is a little bit of a luxury that you're not afforded in this matchup. You need to be worrying about not dying, actually.
No, I completely agree. And they do get the Taunt Totem, which is precisely the one that they'll want, Healing Totem being the one that they want to avoid more than anything else. But yeah, Loot Hoarder comes down on turn 2, and hey, it might not be Keleseth, but I think with Death Rattle Hunter, Loot Hoarder is great on turn 2. Look at how good it is now. It clears up the totem. Not really anything Bulgaria can do about it unless they want to waste their Glacial Shard. Ooh. Zero Mana Lightning Storms can be very, very good in this matchup.
They can be. However, I think with the way it's currently shaking up, Akawanda will be not playing in a way, or his hand leans itself towards playing in a way that is not vulnerable to Lightning Storm, right? Because it's going to be Houndmaster Shaw in the next couple turns, maybe even Cube played it on Houndmaster Shaw, possibly coin Katharina, I would be very unsurprised to see.
I mean, even now, Lightning Storm into Sound Knight Chain Gang is looking good, actually.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it? You're then overloading for 2, so you could play Zola on a Saronite.
Yeah, the only issue is next turn, it does mean that they can't Volcano or play Hex. And as we can see, it's incredibly likely how Master Shaw comes down next turn, which Silent Storm will want to deal with. All of that being said, for the now, this play just looks great.
Yeah, I actually really like this. Like I said, usually it's not going to be that good, because as soon as they get an egg on the board, or a cube on the board, or any Death Rattle minion whatsoever, basically, it's just not going to do anything. As we are seeing this time and time again with Katharina, in that you draw the Katharina, and then 2 draws in a row, you draw a High Main into King Crush. Like, how often have we seen that? That was happened for Brazil, I believe, earlier on in this week.
It was horrible.
And it was absolutely miserable. They pretty much lost the matchup because of that.
That being said, this is where Flanking Strike really shines here. It can deal with 2 of those minions. Houndmaster Shaw can trade as well. But Spain are going to think, is there anything better they can do? Cube Coin Play Dead is actually much better. I remember freaking out about this play a few weeks ago when this happened, and this is exactly why.
This play is filthy. Just look at this. You have rushes, Shaws giving rush to other Shaws. This is not like this. This is not what Hunter was supposed to be doing with Shaw. You're meant to have 1. It's a legendary minion. 2 is just way too many.
And what does Silent Storm even have to do about it? Volcano puts 2 more Shaw on the board. Hex sort of ends up with the same result, with both of the Shaws still alive, but the cube gone. So I guess the question is, which one would they rather keep, Volcano or Hex? If they play Hex, they can also Glacial Shard one of the Shaws, but that doesn't really achieve that much.
It just has to be, I think, Hex into Totem here.
Okay.
Because then you can follow up with Volcano on the following turn if they don't go too wide. They probably will, but imagine if they have Terrascale Stalker. If they have Terrascale Stalker next turn, you are just in a really, really miserable position.
There's something strange going on. Akawanda seems to be in the tavern playing right now.
Oh, yeah. They do have a lot of fun, don't they?
He's growing!
With Akawanda and his green screen. I believe they put us behind him once. But now he's decided to join Hearthstone Brew and the boys in the Hearthstone Tavern. I'm glad you're having fun, production crew.
Anyways, the player suggested a moment ago, the Hex and the Glacial Shard. They went the Shard over the Totem. I guess that means they take less damage more often. But High Main now is looking incredible. So is Saronite. Like, everything the Hunter can do when Shaw's on the board just looks so much better.
I don't know if I like the Glacial Shard. I think maybe now that I think about it, actually just going Hex nothing might have been the best play. Because half the time you get a good one. You get Taunt or 1-1, which is good because you can either clear them off or they have to clear it off to lead into Volcano. The other half the time, you get something that subtracts attack from your Volcano, right?
Yeah.
Which is obviously very bad because you are looking to go Volcano next turn for Silent Storm, I believe. Whereas in the next couple turns, you are definitely going to be facing down a minion that has more than 3 attack. I think that's just pretty much a certainty. As we can see, Highmane, he's definitely a minion that has more than 3 attack. Dare I say double 3 attack.
One thing I learned from Raven, who has played a lot of Hunter in his day, is that if you can jam a Highmane on 6, you jam a Highmane on turn 6. However, this is a Volcano clear. Almost. Is it one short?
That was 8 and 5 and 1. No, that's
it was a
clear.
player. I thought it was. Which is great. The shores are gone. It's just 2 2/2s on the board. Suddenly, this seems manageable, and Akawanda doesn't seem too happy about that at all. I can't help but wonder if that was just a bit of a mistake there, playing into Volcano. Dropping Saronite, for example, would have been 1 extra health on the board. 1 minion would have survived. I don't know.
Well, it was 8. It was 8 health on the shores, right? Because they were both at 4. 5 on the Highmane, which is 13, and then 1 on the.
Oh, so it was actually
frog.
overkill.
Yeah.
So Saronite wouldn't have been any better. Okay, they didn't have a choice then.
Yeah.
If this egg was drawn 1 turn sooner, though,
yes,
that would have been ideal.
But then we can't be results oriented, right? Because then what if Silent Storm doesn't have the Volcano?
Yeah.
In that instance, the risk is so worth the reward because Akawanda just wins. He pushes like 12 damage, if not more, on that turn, and after that, he has the opponent really has no way to pull that back because they needed exactly Volcano right there, and they did manage to get it.
Now Bulgaria find themselves sort of with a bit of breathing room. This board is starting to get overwhelming again, and there's no board clear present. Again, 1 Lightning Storm used up already, 1 Volcano used up. And do they have a second Storm? I think most lists are still running 2 Lightning Storms. Yeah, especially with Electra, it's just worth it. So I guess it's just got to be a defensive Saronite or yeah.
It feels pretty bad to go for this, especially when you get the Healing Totem, which is pretty much unanimously agreed upon as being the worst the vast majority of the time.
Especially in Shadowwalk Shaman.
In Shadowwalk Shaman, yeah.
In different decks.
Oh yeah,
historically it's been incredible.
In even Shaman, Healing Totem's insane in the early terms because you can heal up your Merc Spark heal or whatever, and it makes a big difference. But here, everything's dying on this turn anyway, so it shouldn't make too much difference.
Akawanda does have to put a little bit of work in to deal with this, though. Like, he could trade in everything on his board. That's kind of awkward. It just leaves him with the Saronite. Katharina, though, again on turn 8, is invaluable. He has at least some Grizzlies left in the deck.
Yes, I think 2 Grizzlies. So you want to play Katharina sooner rather than later, so you're not drawing them. He needs to be thinking about Hagatha potential, because obviously Bulgaria were overloaded on the previous turn, so Hagatha wasn't a possibility. So if you don't trade in these minions at all, Hagatha isn't so bad for you, I guess, because they have to trade off their own minions.
But trading everything in and playing Katharina just looks like the best play around Hagatha, because the Hagatha barely does anything. Except crack the egg open.
Okay, middle of the road play, right? It's still decent against Hagatha because you're pushing an awful lot of damage, especially when you have the big bad boy himself, King Crush, ready to rock on down on the following turn and pretty much just close out this game for Spain.
As Bulgaria have nothing going on once again. No way of drawing cards immediately, no way of clearing the board. Yeah, okay, Earthshock can prevent Katharina from going off again, but the Manatide Totem takes a turn to draw a card. We've got to be just getting close to the Hunter just outright having lethal, actually.
And when I was saying that the Hunters are often not playing for high enough value in these slightly slower control matchups, those kind of situations only occur when you don't perfectly curve out. In this game, it was Shaw, Cube into Play Dead, and then they had Katharina, they had Highmane. It was just the perfect curve. Obviously, you're not running out of cards when you're playing 1 card a turn. You're just perfectly curving out with incredibly overstatted minions. Katharina just, in terms of the raw stats it gives you, is absurd.
Silent Storm getting the Taunt Totem, able to draw a card. Another Saronite, okay. They really need another Lightning Storm or Volcano desperately to play with Electro. I don't even think double Volcano is enough to calculate the amount of health that Akawanda is going to have on the board over the next couple turns. Cube there too.
Yeah, it's a weird turn here for Spain. King Crush is the most obvious play. It's you got 9 mana, you can throw it down, hit them for 8, try and close out the game. But Cube on the Katharina I don't think is that bad, because it gives you an immediate, very strong play onto the board. Summoning 6/6s with its Death Rattle isn't bad. And as long as you're not dying to one big removal, be it through Electro Volcano or Lightning Storm Volcano, whatever, to clear off this board, I think you just win in the long term. Obviously, however, if you think you can achieve it, you should go King Crush and then keep that King Crush, as Spain go for. But I like this somewhat slow play there, because I don't think it was quite as obvious as it appeared on face value. But when you put it like this, when your opponent's on 13 and you have an incredibly dominant board, I guess this looks pretty good.
Yep. And just one more turn where Bulgaria cannot do anything about it as they draw Mana Tide Totem. And unfortunately, as good as that card is, it doesn't do anything the turn it's played. And that is looking like that's the end of the game, as Spain are going to take their first win. I don't think there's any way out of this for Silent Storm anyway.
Yeah, they can go Electra into Healing Rain if they wanted to heal up for 24, which is obviously massive overkill in terms of the healing. They could just go for 1, it takes them up to 25, I suppose, either way. Just gets them slightly out of range, I believe, for the moment.
Yep. Yep.
It's not a great plan, but it's all the plan they've got.
But the fact that they draw 2 cards next turn could make all of the difference. There's a Lightning Storm. All right, and there's a Glacial Shard. So Electra Shard, Earth Shock and Glacial Shard can do some work. Just.
Here we go.
Play dead.
Yeah, we are looking for Play Deads, and we are looking for Terrascale Stalkers, neither of which was found for Akawanda. And the Witchwood Grizzly means that there's no Death Rattle now on the Katharina, but there is only one choice then.
I can't even imagine Rexstar being that important from this point onwards.
Well, it's just a Consecrate here, right, basically.
Oh, sure, sure.
You don't have to play it on this turn, but if you go for the cube on the King Crush on this turn and you get hexed, maybe hit with Hex Lightning Storm or Hex Volcano even in the worst case scenario.
$18 damage, including that hero power, being jammed to the face. Spain just saying, we don't care how many cards you draw. This game's not going to go on for much longer.
And even with Electra Storm Surge into the Lightning Storm, if it was perfect rolls on every minion, if you go hero power first to get the spell damage, and then it was perfect rolls on every minion, I guess then you could kill off King Crush. Or actually you could just clear off the board, right?
Clear the board, yeah.
But that's
having to Earth Shock this first, of course.
Very, very optimistic indeed.
But it's just the play, isn't it?
Oh, I was going to say that Bulgaria should have gone for the attack in last, but they wouldn't want their minion to die off to Spider Bomb.
Right.
Even then, it's worth considering going for the even less likely outcome, because they have to get so lucky here to still be in this game.
They got the 1 in 3.
Oh.
Now it's just a couple 50-50s. Quite a few 50-50s, actually.
Now you just start off with the Lightning Storm. You don't care where the Spider Bomb goes at this point. You just need to freeze whatever survives.
No, got some 3s there on some vital 4 targets.
But they're alive.
And King Crush is the only minion that survives, so it can be frozen. Okay, but now just play dead or Terrascale ends the game.
Closes out the game.
For Spain. Hunter's Mark doesn't do anything.
Oh, you can't Hunter's Mark your own cube because you can't candle shot it or anything silly like that. So I guess it's Deathstalker Rexxar on this turn, because it does a pretty good amount of work onto the board. Cubing your own King Crush just to protect it here.
Yeah, or even playing Hunter's Mark on Electra so that there's nothing on the board that contests with King Crush after Rexxar goes off.
would you rather save the Hunter's Mark for anything else and just leave up the Manatide Totem? You've seen both chain gangs, so getting through taunts isn't so much of a consideration.
What's even good to King Crush in this matchup? Just Shadowbox and Grumble, right?
Well, the face is good to King Crush.
No, sorry, Hunter's Mark.
Hunter's Mark, oh, right. Yeah, it's mainly just taunts, I'm thinking, which is why they're leaving
like this
in the end.
Yep, I like this a lot. Clear up everything. No damage on the board. Maybe this King Crush survives and doesn't get frozen again next turn.
Man, this turn for Spain has gotten pretty sketchy when they were just right on the cusp of winning. Well-discovered Zombies here, if they even have the time, could still put them in a situation to take it. I believe that is a stealth Zombies they took, but that's now a Shudderwock that's been found for Bulgaria.
Doesn't matter. They only have 6 mana. Shudderwock costs 9. Bulgaria need a Taunt Totem or they're just dead. Wait, no. Life Drinker puts their health high enough to survive.
To 10, and then they would technically be alive on board. Okay, so alive at 1 health for the moment. Second candle shot, unfortunately you can't dual wield them.
They just need 1 damage from this hero power, that shouldn't be difficult.
You can't do anything silly with the Zombies because it doesn't have charge.
Yeah, it's just...
You start digging.
Hero power, anything that deals 1 damage. Life Drinkers, charge minions.
There's
buffs on King Crush, anything like that.
Anything. Even just a Timberwolf here would do
Life
it.
Drinker?
Life Drinker,
that's gonna do it.
There you go. That is gonna do it. Oh, Life Drinker plus Charger. Even better.
And relax. I'd called this game about 3 turns ago because I thought Akawanda had done it. I missed the Lightning Storm entirely in Silent Storm's hand, but there you go. He has done it as Akawanda loses his elbow, but still very happy about this win.
He was looking a little bit stressed there towards the end, as we were all in agreement that game was just won. It was the perfect Hunter curve to be taking out the Shudderwock Shaman. Still, however, fighting on right till the bitter end there was Silent Storm, almost taking that one. But kind of a little bit of a taste of their own medicine, I suppose, after getting the perfect Zoo hand in the previous game. Here, you know, Spain got a little bit of the good stuff in a very nice curve, with Houndmaster Shaw really just rounding out that game.
Now, to everyone that was watching in the last series, I hope that you enjoyed the Big Spell Mage versus Odd Warrior matchup, as we're going to be bringing our very own one of those to you after the break. Welcome back, it's the Hearthstone Global Games, and next up, as I said a moment ago, we're going to have Big Spell Mage for Bulgaria versus Odd Warrior for Spain. And now, Derek, we watched this matchup in the previous series, between South Korea and the United Kingdom. It did seem like the United Kingdom played very well as the Odd Warrior, but at the end, South Korea did take the win. What do we think about this matchup now?
So, like Dan and Lorinda were saying in the previous series, this is not a matchup that I believe either of us have a whole lot of experience in, because even if you were setting out to test this series, you could have done it for weeks and you've only played about 5 games with it anyway. But from what we saw, even though UK played very well, had a deck that was built very well to take on this matchup, I believe, with 2 Direhorn Hatchlings and an Elise and a Faceless and a Zola, just for the absolute most value variant of the deck possible, still ended up falling down to the onslaught of water elementals that was generated. But as a point back to the Odd Warrior, that was a game where Jaina was played on turn 8 with the coin. That was the earliest possible Death Knight the Control Mage could throw down. So maybe if the Odd Warrior is given a little bit more breathing room, there isn't quite so many water elementals being made, they could get there in the end. But again, is looking like it is going to be fairly Control Mage favored.
Yeah, I mean, in the previous game, if I remember rightly, yes, Jaina went down on turn 8, but Dr. Boom was also played very, very early by the United Kingdom. So I guess in the battle of Frostlich Jaina versus Dr. Boom, Frostlich Jaina does win. However,
it's not even close.
However, it's always been the case with Big Spell Mage that if Jaina isn't drawn, the deck just sort of doesn't have a purpose.
That is true, which is why I would imagine we'll see from Bulgaria a complete hard mulligan for literally every card that isn't Frostlich Jaina, because they are going to be in such a good spot if they do find it, from what we've seen, that it is really just all they care about.
Meanwhile, for Jacob, he has Town Crier, which is, wow, a discussion point in its own. Does he want to draw cards? Does he not want to draw cards?
that was kind of UK's saving grace in the last series, was they could add overall, I think, 4 cards to their deck over the course of the game, with 2 Dial Hatchlings and Elise, and then a Zolid Elise as well. But it didn't save them, did it? Even though they were taking 3 fatigue when their opponent was taking 7, I think it turned out to, it didn't make a difference because they need to find removal. So maybe we will see cards being drawn in this matchup for Jacob. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, generally, in these very slow matchups that will pretty much always go to fatigue, the rule is you don't draw cards ever. But maybe when you're a massive underdog, if Spain think they're in such a miserable position, we could see some cards being drawn.
No Frostless Jaina in Bulgaria's hand just yet. Raven Familiar, though, which again brings up that debate. Do they want to draw cards? I should imagine not.
It is just a slightly more unexplored matchup, though, because if this was a Control Mage mirror, they would not be drawing cards, because they just want to be taking it as long as possible. Any card drawn is pretty much a mistake. But I think they're realizing here that their win condition isn't fatiguing their opponent. It's very possibly taking the game through to the fatigue state, but after that, they just start overwhelming their opponent with water elementals. That is their win condition, is there's not that many board sweeps available to the warrior. So you would just overwhelm them eventually, so drawing to Frostlich Jaina is a more consistent win condition.
Yep, which means we'll see that plan continue then, I guess, as Bright Red Scout is drawn off at the top. Could even have Frostlich Jaina played on turn 5, Derek. Imagine. Imagine.
Imagine a story.
Actually, too scared to imagine that.
Here for Jacob, just with the pretty standard, easy plan of hero powering on turn 2, curving out with your minions because you don't want to have your armor chipped away, I guess, and it's just something to get onto the board. Maybe if they can get a little bit of pressure going, they could start overwhelming their opponent. But there is the Frostlich Jaina.
Yeah, I don't really have all that much to add to that now. We know exactly what's happening on turn 9 without question. There's no question as to whether or not Best Uda even survives until turn 9. Of course they will. They're against an odd warrior. I am wondering if that Lich King can do something. Unfortunately for Jacob, the reality is he's against a big spell mage, a deck that has a lot of removal, polymorphs, meteors, voodoo dolls even. There is a way that that Lich King will be destroyed immediately. So what one Death Knight card can give them an edge?
There are some very powerful
Frostmourne?
ones. Yeah, Death Grip and Frostmourne are pretty much the big ones. Death Coil probably doesn't do enough. You don't want Death Doom Pact, any of that stuff. It is just the ones that give you extra value that are so good. But Lich King getting it now is something I want to point out, is any removal piece that is used for the mage before Frostlich Jaina comes down is a win for Jacob, because that is one less water elemental he has to deal with.
Unless it's Meteor. A Meteor can't...
Even then, like, you can always use these big spells to make water elementals at a later stage in the game. That's how the Control Mage Mirror works, isn't it? Is you don't really play any of your cards, you don't draw anything, you play Jaina, and then you should be winning the matchup by making every one of your spells equal a water elemental.
Right.
Because you manipulate your opponent's minions' health totals, you ping, and you dominate them with water elementals. But for Spain, it's looking like that's not going to be a possibility to starve their opponent off removal pieces, because the Jaina is just in hand, waiting to come down on turn 9. Even going with the Shield Slams very aggressively towards the start of the game, in part to clear out hand space, because they want to be not playing cards, I would imagine, for a good period of the game, and also because they're afraid of Skulking Geist, which I would have to imagine, as I actually take a look at the list, that Bulgaria will be playing. They do have the Skulking Geist in there.
So Spain are going to want to draw their Omega Assemblies and Shield Slams as soon as possible. Yes. I mean, if for no other reason, to prevent them from being ripped out of the deck and pushing them further into fatigue. But primarily because they are going to want to get some mechs from these Omega Assemblies. They want some pressure as early as they can. It's just so difficult to do anything once Jaina gets played. It really is.
It's almost a shame that the Omega Assembly gives you a Discover rather than just 3 random mechs, because you want to get, I think, just as many Beryllium Nullifiers as possible, really, where they are untargetable, so unpingable, and a threat that can't make water elementals for your opponent. I suppose the Discover means you're more likely to get it because it waits
Yeah.
Warrior ones. But even then.
I mean, on 10 it essentially is 3 random mechs, but the point being they're not going to want to wait until turn 10 to play it because of that Skulking Ghost.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not 3 random mechs because you can't get the same one more than once because it's Discover.
Oh, okay, sure,
and
sure.
it's weighted towards Warrior ones. I'm saying if it was 3 random mechs, that would be perfect because...
Then they just get 3 brilliant nullifiers and win the game. See, yeah, that'd be much more likely.
All right, facetious. A hypothetical, nothing more. Bulgaria here are clearly demonstrating that tension, that balance that you have to strike that I was talking about, where you don't want to be overwhelmed early on, you do want to be removing these high priority minions, but a polymorph being used before Frostlich Jaina is so deceptively important, I think, in this matchup. Because that's just one, even ignoring the threats that Jacob can throw down, which are obviously pretty limited in an Odd Warrior, it's just one less Water Elemental, which is a huge difference.
Yep. Playing down these giggling inventors before Frostlich Jaina has been played is also a bit of a bonus for Spain, as obviously they're nothing but a liability later on, but for now maybe they can get a little bit of chip damage in.
I'm just taking a look now, actually, at the list from Spain. It's a pretty interesting Odd Warrior. They've cut the Super Colliders from the list, which I don't see in many now, in favor of a Gorehowl and the Rush package, with 2 Town Criers, 2 Rabid Walkins, and the Darius Crowley that we've seen. Probably works in their favor here, because we saw for the UK in the last series, both Super Colliders got completely stranded in their hand because of all the Water Elemental freezes.
Exactly, and also if you look at the shape of most of the minions, apart from, I guess, Dragon Call or Alano, there's not really any good targets for Super Collider. You hit 2 Water Elementals into each other, that's great. They've each taken 3 damage, or one's taken 4, the other's taken 3.
They've frozen each other, though.
That's true, actually. I hadn't thought about that.
It's not going to come up again, because there are no Super Colliders in this deck list. Jacob here with no Zola in his deck, so the reason to not go for at least the Trailblazer whenever he wants... well, there's not much reason. You just throw it down whenever you think the statted body is good.
Coin Lich King is a reason to be thinking at the moment. Like, getting down this 8-8, maybe it can't be dealt with straight away. It can. We can see there's a point there, but maybe with Stonehill instead, okay.
Yeah, taking it real nice and slow. Like, the reason to not go for Elise or Lich King is because they believe they are overextending at that point, I think. Whereas Giggle's coming down before Frostlich Jaina, this I like, because after that point, you're never playing them again.
No, exactly.
Yeah, this is really smart. And it's not even that weak to AoE, because they can trade, ping into Blizzard, I guess is the best case scenario. But even then, that's a big spell that's being used before Frostlich Jaina, which is a very minor, but still a victory for Spain.
Then again, does Bastida EU even have to clear this? It's not that much damage.
Yeah, he doesn't really have to, does he?
7 damage represented on the board across 6 minions. That's fine.
With 9 cards in hand, Lich King could be played with no risk of overdraw quite yet.
Can I actually go for Blizzard? I'm surprised to see this.
I'm kind of surprised to see this as well. But from their opponent, if they played Lich King, man, it's not even a BGH. They would have to be Shield Slam to take it out without trading minions of their own, which means they would then be taking 6 or more damage, like 8 damage on this turn if they just played Lich King here. And then they have to play Jaina next turn because you want to play as quick as possible. So they would be taking a fair bit of damage if they played Lich King and it was removed. And maybe they just want to play Lich King when it's uncontested and can get continual value.
Dr. Moon picked up and ignored for now. Obviously, it can't be played that turn with the hero power, so may as well go with the big play that is the Lich King. This also blocks the Frostlich Jaina turn. I did say on turn 9 we know what's going to happen 100% of the time. Well, hey, I guess not, because Bulgaria do have to deal with this Lich King. Those Death Knight cards can add up and get to be too much.
So they don't have to deal with it here. They want to, I agree. But if you go Jaina this turn, there's still a taunt in the way. you can then next turn just go Polymorph Ping. And again, you want to be getting those water elementals made every single turn because the warrior does not have enough answers for them.
Interesting. Also worth considering the fact that Dr. Boom would unfreeze the face when played. Maybe that comes into play at some point if a Gore Howl is developed and then the face is frozen. Dr. Boom would counter that. As we do see, Best Uda does get rid of the Lich King with Meteor, decides that that extra Death Knight card is too much of a risk.
And so, yeah, then their thinking is they're using Meteor instead of Polymorph, aren't they? And you pointed out Meteor is less likely to end up generating a water elemental than the other cards. Obviously, Polymorph, Voodoo Doll, Giggling Inventor always end up giving you
the best one.
Water elemental.
That's the best one right now, right? And there's no better situation for this. It just clears up the board.
It's good here. Would you still rather just generate a mech? Like, your opponent has a couple of 2-1s on the board. You kind of just say, so what, and carry on with your life, I think.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's pretty good.
I think I just got excited because I know Fossilitch Jane is about to come down, and this one's utterly useless after that. Yeah. But at that exact moment in time, it was looking good. This Obliterate is also not looking too bad, actually. Just deal with the Water Elemental. The only problem is they lack any other form of removal, so that Lich King wouldn't be able to be dealt with, for example.
I like going for the Gore Howl here while there's no other water elementals on the board because, you know, they get frozen for a turn, they deal with that and move on with their lives.
There's the mech.
That's what you're looking for, I think. Even then, we were talking about this before the series, this game happened in the last series, and I was saying, well, we were talking about, do you play Dr. Boom as the odd warrior? Because tank up for 4 is just good. Like, that gets you a little bit, gets you closer and closer to not dying in fatigue. And I think we pretty much realized you just have to, I think. Even if you get a little bit of value out of the zap, gain 7, discover a mech is pretty good. You are potentially giving them more water elementals later on, because if you play any mech and they polymorph it and ping it, or flame strike and ping it, that's kind of rough.
I spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not you Dr. Boom in all sorts of odd warrior matchups, and the conclusion I've sort of come to at the moment is, yes, you gain a lot of armor with tank up, but often the dealing 3 damage, the microbots, etc., they also sort of heal you at the same time by removing bits of the board, potentially for more than 4 each turn, and I think in the long run, the Dr. Boom hero power is probably just better. Random legendary, huh?
That doesn't seem all too bad. If that gets polymorphed to remove the death rattle, I think you're pretty happy as Spain.
It has rush, so it can just go straight into the ledge.
Oh, that's true.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
We're trying, Dr. Boom, we're trying.
You got to think very carefully about just rushing in a minion purely for a death rattle, though, because each one of these mechs is a valuable removal piece throughout the course of this game.
Oh, what were you saying before about Beryllium Nullifier?
Oh, I love that music.
Oh, Bulldozer looks pretty tempting here, though. It takes out a Syndragosa. It's just a 9/7. It's difficult to deal with.
Nullifier must have been so tempting.
I still might have picked the Beryllium Nullifier there, though, because you can stick it on one of these minions, smack them for 4, and they don't have a good answer outside of Voodoo Doll. That's all they have to deal with untargetable minions.
I guess, though, for now, because the Voodoo Dolls are still in the deck, there's just no point in playing into it.
Reality woven.
And the plan here, the best Udyr in all of Europe, is pretty easy. You're just making a water elemental every single turn and hoping your opponent runs out of threats or runs out of removal to deal with them.
So Bulldozer can deal with the water elemental. Obviously, Gore Howl can also deal with the water elemental. This may be a good position to trade the weaponized Pinata in, because maybe that with the security rover would be able to clear the board.
This would be a good time
Weaponized
for a
Pinata
master
into the water
plan.
elemental, then security rover into the 1/2, and then the taunt that comes out goes into water elemental that clears everything. They also get the legendary in hand.
Interesting.
Okay, then.
He does sort of want to be getting the value out of hero power every turn, but this hero power is just so bad, isn't it? Like, you don't have to play this every turn. You just do it when it's good.
Yeah. It's just one of those turns where you wish it was tank up, that's all. Deal 3 is much better. That anti-magic shell is going to do some work at some point, though it's going to force out a brawl. That's what it's going to do. So maybe Best Udo is just going to want to play it on 2 cards, maybe Bright Scout and Arcane Artificer or something, just to cause the most awkward board possible.
I must decide.
I'm not even sure Udo's going to want to play the Bright-Eyed Scout, though. He's already behind on fatigue.
Yeah, he really just wishes he had a Blizzard on this turn, I guess, to get a ping in. Because this Security Rover, if he manipulates it in the right way, could be a water elemental generating machine. If you just get it to plop out sentry or guard bots, whatever they're called, turn after turn, you could be ending up with a lot of elementals. But clearly here, Udo is thinking, I don't have the necessary spells to manipulate the health totals correctly. Let's just get this out of the way and follow up on the next turn on my own terms.
Some well-placed Cinder Storms would have been great that turn.
Sure.
You're very confused by that, aren't you?
Well, you're not wrong. And this is going to be setting off all kind of alarms very appropriately for Spain on this turn, as they are thinking, why does my opponent want to clear off my board of minions? Because for Bulgaria, Jacob having weak minions that don't do much damage should be good for them, because eventually that means they can generate them into water elementals. So Jacob is thinking, what could my opponent do with a clear board that is so scary? To which the answer is probably just Syndragosa, right? You want to play that when you're not under much pressure, get the ping off on it, and start generating those powerful water elementals and those very, very powerful legendaries.
There have been a few big spells cast, like 2 or 3, at least a Blizzard and a Dragon's Fury, but not many, so I don't think Alana is really something to think about just yet. And again, Brawl just deals with Alana very nicely.
You just wait for Alana for a fair bit, because eventually if you keep playing this slow plan where you're making water elementals, they will run out of stuff.
I did expect Jacob to clear that Doomsayer, actually, and play another board.
Oh, really? I think then he's a little bit afraid of Flame Strike, Blizzards, even Dragon's Fury to clear off his board and get a ping. And playing the Elise there is really interesting to me. He obviously wants to play it at some point, because if he doesn't, then he never gets the pack and he's just not winning this game. But if he does play it when it's dying off to a Doomsayer, it means it can't be Flame Strike pinged. And it's one of the very few minions left in his hand, or in his deck even, that doesn't have Rush. Because all these minions are either mechs, which have Rush innately due to Dr. Boom, or they are Rabid Worgans that are left in the deck, which can just kill off water elementals on the turn that they are played, which is so important.
No, I think it's true. Given a little bit of thought, not clearing it was absolutely fine. There are some easy ways to get rid of it. Dynamatic, for example, on its own would have done the job. But you're right, like just save the Rush minions for actual threats. As it seems that we do have a little technical difficulty, as you could probably tell from that little pop-up on the screen for the last 30 or so seconds. Although, in the corner of my eye, I can see the game has now resumed. So, I believe we'll be jumping back in any second now. Just to give you a bit of audio commentary, though, Bulgaria has just played Syndragosa and pinged it. There we go.
Oh, joining at an interesting time. Katharina, I actually have drawn both Raven Familiars. Katharina's just kind of bad. Katharina is just imprinted in my mind as being one of the best legendaries in Hearthstone, just in terms of raw power.
There aren't any other beasts.
But yeah, no beast. So Katharina is definitely not what you're looking for Bulgaria.
Still no Skulking Geist played from Bulgaria either. That is relevant, because when that gets played, the amount of cards left in Spain's deck does fall by a few. One Omega Assembly's been played, I think. But
I think it's one of each. One Shield Slam, one Assembly's been played, yeah.
So actually, Skulking Geist would even out the fatigue game if drawn in the immediate future.
Okay, then.
I think now would be a good time for a master plan.
I am just so thankful that Dr. Boom was given good voice lines, because he's always the Death Knight we hear most of all, because he's always in these really long Odd Warrior games. But thankfully he's pretty funny, so I won't begrudge him. As that is a pretty good Dynamatic there, clearing off anything that could be pinged away.
Yeah. It's the expected result too, isn't it? Just the minion with the most health is the one that survives.
Checks out.
Yep.
Spirit Singer Umbra as well being generated by Udid. Do they have anything that could get
just
synergy there? Yeah, Syndragosa I think is the only one now because the Pyros variant of Control Mage that we saw a few months ago when N'Zoth was still in Standard obviously is not available anymore with Whispers of the Old Gods rotating out of Standard.
I'm not seeing any other way of them generating. Oh, apart from I guess Stonehill Defender into a Death Rattle, but we're really having to think about that one.
Yeah, what beneficial death rattles are there you can get off taunts?
Abomination.
Yeah, Abomination, it's stuff like that. It's not particularly good. Rotten Applebaum for 5 health.
Mechathune!
A taunted Mechathune? Yeah.
I was just thinking Death Rattles then. Any opportunity to win the game with a Mechathune, though they can't do with Spirit Singer Umbra on the board, obviously.
The time is now.
So realizing upon the fact that it cannot get any value, they're just going to play it down and say to Jacob here, you got to have an answer for this, or we're just going to start killing you very quickly indeed. As the Syndragosa, we were thinking of the value that Syndragosa gets you from the legendaries and the water elementals, but it's often forgotten, I think, that it is just an 8/8 for 8. That is not bad at all.
So what can Spain do about this mess? Again, all of their mechs in the hand have rush, so weaponized Pinata's looking okay. Bulldozer would just clear up Syndragosa but leave Spirit Singer Umbra alive. Ziliax is very interesting because of the lifesteal here.
You could go, if you're happy with drawing cards, we could see Town Crier, Ziliax plus the Rabid Worgen to start clearing stuff off. Again, it's not great.
I kind of like the look of weaponized Pinata and Ziliax magnetized together to clear the 10-7. It also restores 7 health to Spain. It does leave Umbra alive, but that's not too much of a threat.
Yeah. Are you afraid of water elementals being generated? Then you have a 5 health minion left, which doesn't trades pretty well actually against the Spirit Singer Umbra. Yeah, it's not a bad plan.
Flame Strike, I guess, is the issue there. Yeah, they're just going to draw a card.
Yeah. Reckless Flurry. With the hero power as well.
That's
finally,
nice.
For the first time in Hearthstone history, Kaboom actually does something.
You clearly haven't played Odd Warrior versus Odd Paladin, Derek, have you?
No, I haven't. I guess that would be acceptable.
That's one word for it.
And for Bulgaria, as their options to generate water elementals on their own terms, or with their own minions, I should say, is starting to run out. So they have to be thinking about that Dragon Caller Alana. They've just demanded an answer from their opponent, which was, you know, not necessarily too much of a stretch. They had to draw a card, but not the end of the world. So they do just go for an Alana here. Not a particularly high value one, and still one that has a pretty easy answer for Spain.
Yeah, well, it's just going to be Brawl plus the weapon, or plus the hero power, or Brawl plus something to deal with the board. The something doesn't even particularly matter. I don't think they're going to want to shield block into Reckless Flurry again. Seems like a bit of a waste of cards in the deck that they need to remain in the deck. As, hey, the best minion for Spain survive. Now hero power alone deals with that, which means they can just not play anything this turn. Again.
I don't think it was quite so easy necessarily as going for just Brawl there instead of Shield Block into Reckless Flurry. Really? Because I think at some point, if you're going to be winning this game, you have to go for Reckless Flurry. Because they're going to make another big board, be it through Water Elementals, be it through the Legendaries that they've generated, of which you still have one that you haven't seen. And if you are going to do that, where do you get the armor from? It's just, from this hero power. But even then, that's 1 out of 5 to hit that on any specific turn.
Timing is pretty nice here, though, with the Shield Slam picked up off the top, clearing up Katharina very nicely. And now, it's just going to be nothing again, I guess. They could fit in the Beryllium Nullifier this turn, but given that no Voodoo Dox has been played yet, that sounds like quite a risk.
I think if you take it even slower than this, you can probably force your opponent to just go Voodoo Doll Ping, just to make a Water Elemental for 5 mana from your opponent, or even bait it out with one of these other minions. Because if they can go for Beryllium Nullifier with the magnetic effect perhaps as well, that is where it gets actually like it could be a card that swings this game back for them.
This Gorhao has already done some serious work. I think it's down to 4 attack already, but Glossin's Ooze is going to be dealing with the rest of that. But I do like Best Uda, just the fact that he can play Polymorph and Ping this turn. Again, puts another Water Elemental on the board, doesn't use up Voodoo Doll.
I just realized as well, actually, taking a look at the deck list for Bulgaria, they're not playing Giggling Inventors in this deck. I believe they've cut it for 2 copies of Bright-Eyed Scout.
Oh.
Looks to me to be the closest cutout.
That's much worse in this matchup.
Yeah, which is a lot worse in this matchup. I quite agree with you. Wait, what did they just do? Sorry, I was looking at the deck list because that was such an obvious turn. Did they just misclick? How can that be right? How can that be correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is what just happened. It has to be. Jacob looks as confused as we are.
I think I heard them emote. Like I'm playing catch up here because that was such an obvious turn. You play it and you ping it.
I mean, I was already a little bit confused that they went with the Voodoo Doll rather than the Polymorph when Beryllium Nullifier exists as a mech.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
Yeah,
maybe they should have gone for that instead. I suppose I should say if they're playing the Voodoo Doll, you ping it, right?
Well, absolutely. There's no question about that. There is no benefit whatsoever to not having a Water Elemental on the board. That's sort of the whole purpose of the deck.
That is the whole point of the deck, yep. Yeah, you know what? I have my doubts as to whether he is actually the best Udyr in EU. I think there's probably a couple of maybe superior Udyrs, dare I say.
What's an Udyr, Derek?
I have absolutely no idea. All I know is he's the best one.
You say you have no Udyr?
Oh, that was quite good, actually. Yes, I did say that. I definitely said that.
I thought so. So it's another potential Bulldozer turn. However, there are so many other ways Jacob can deal with this. Even just Dynamatic, the Battle Cry deals with it alone. How risky is Dynamatic to play regarding Water Elementals? Like Flame Strike doesn't,
4's the
Blizzard
best.
doesn't, Meteor doesn't.
4 is exactly where you want to be. Like 4 and 2 are the sweet spots against Control Mage. Playing 4 when you have another minion on the board becomes a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Because then they can go Meteor Ping, obviously.
Ooh, another weaponized Pinata. Spain's just, they're ready to get Togwaggle from one of these and Azalina from the other one. It's going to happen. I did see that on Reddit today.
Really?
Yeah.
Thanks, Reddit. It's still the best shot, isn't it, for them? I mean, Dynamatic is clearly good to get because you just go Dynamatic straight up trades for a Water Elemental.
I mean, they have now played into Meteor, though, as you said. Once there's 2 minions, Meteor on one and then Ping on the other.
I think you're always vulnerable to something. I think this is about as good as you can get because they had to play a card from hand, which means they obviously hero-powered every time they get the delivery drone, which means they had to play a card from hand. If they get rid of a Meteor here, it's not the end of the world because one of their slightly bigger minions, like the Bulldozer perhaps, could stick on the board.
Another turn with that Beryllium Nullifier must be somewhat tempting. The problem is clearing off that Doomsayer.
Well, I think the first discussion that Spain need to be having is, do we want to clear off this Doomsayer at all?
As with the previous one, they didn't.
Exactly. They just took that opportunity to clear minions off on the board because I suppose we haven't really outright stated it, but generally the plan for any kind of control deck with a strong Death Knight against Control Mage is you just stop playing minions, rely on your hero power to win you the game because they can't make any Water Elementals. Yep. That's what Shadow Reaper Anduin does, that's what Blood Reaver Gul'dan does, that's kind of what Malfurion does, but that's a little bit weirder because you have strong alternate win conditions with like Malagos and Togwaggle.
You just stop playing Hearthstone cards.
You just stop playing your stuff, exactly. Ooh, speaking of Malagos.
There are no spells though, are there?
There is nothing here. I agree with you. If off of Ongoro, we could see, I think Flame Geyser is actually the only Ongoro card that does damage to face.
It is. I believe it is.
Yeah.
The only spell anyway, and so this pack is going to have 5 Flame Geysers in, is that right?
I would be somewhat surprised.
It's about as likely as 3 random mechs all being Beryllium Nullifiers.
Why not? Yeah. So that's the plan. We play the Malagos as Spain. Somehow our opponent has no removal for it in a deck that is entirely removal. And then you just windmill slam the pack, four of those geezers straight to the face. With English slang, that starts to sound a little bit weirder.
It does, yeah. This isn't the most exciting Discover I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's just bad. You could go for Osrock, because Arcane Artificer into Osrock is a 9-mana Ancient of War. Brilliant.
Great. And now, does Spain just jam Malagos? Not using the hero power does seem a little bit awkward, but it only gets destroyed by Polymorph or Voodoo Doll. Or Meteor, obviously, but the only way is that it gets destroyed and Bulgaria get a Water Elemental, Polymorph or Voodoo Doll. So it must be tempting, and the more of those Voodoo Dolls that get used, the better Beryllium Nullifier it gets.
I'm just kind of looking at the alternatives, which are you can play the Weaponized Pinata, trade it in, it then goes to 2 health, which is good. That's a good health total to be at. It's very difficult to make a Water Elemental out of 2 health. And then what do you play to clear hand size? Ziliax, just as another minion. I guess you could magnetize Ziliax onto it to gain health, but you want to do something more impressive with Ziliax. I'm kind of reaching for anything else to do, as they do just slam that Malagos onto the board. Their Reckless Flurry now does 7 damage to all minions. I think that's literally the only card left in the deck that actually does damage.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, again, the Angora pack, maybe not damage to the face, but Meteor could do some stuff with Malagos.
Lyra into...
Oh,
I don't even
Mind
know.
Blast.
Yeah. Lyra gives priest cards, doesn't it? It's not just the fact that you're in
it's definitely priest.
Yeah, yeah. So then you go Lyra into a whole lot of Holy Smites. Yeah, we're obviously reaching a little bit here, but Malagos does do some pretty crazy stuff.
Hey.
Ungoro pack does some crazy stuff.
We did see 2 Lyras gotten off of the Angora pack of the previous series. Unfortunately, there wasn't a single spell to play with that Lyra.
Obviously, first of all, the Malagos would have had to survive.
The dream is dead.
Yeah, it was a pretty tall order. This turn, however, gets a little bit more difficult for Spain, with no real ability to effectively clear off that Water Elemental without going massively overkill, as obviously Hero Power Reckless Flurry here does do the job. But then you're down to 11, you've used Reckless Flurry, which is, if you get the Blast Shield Hero Power, one of the best cards left in your deck, because your opponent eventually will go wide with Water Elementals. And for Jacob as well, if he can clear off one final wave of Water Elementals from his opponent, as opposed to the last series where UK just couldn't really get rid of enough Water Elementals, this one, Syndragos has been played. They don't play Giggling Inventors in the deck at all for some reason. I guess they're afraid of Mossy Horrors or Blood Knights. Yeah. Even then, Giggling Inventor is insane in Control Mage. I think it's pretty reasonable that Jacob will actually be able to clear off all the Water Elementals in this game.
Leaving both minions on 2 health, as you said, 2 and 4 are the sweet spots against the removal for turning into Water Elementals. There's the second Voodoo Doll, though. Once that gets played, Beryllium Nullifier looks really good.
No, I don't think there's any way whatsoever to make a Water Elemental on this turn, outside of the Voodoo Doll, which I don't think Bulgaria want to be playing whatsoever here.
No.
Because they're facing down at least, 2-3 mechs that have been generated from their opponent, and another random legendary still to come down. Very potentially more. What's to stop them from generating more weaponized pinatas off that hero power?
I must decide.
It's a difficult game to analyze as well from one of the things I was wanting to keep track on, which was Spain's decision to draw cards right at the start of the game. They went for the Enchanted Raven on, the Raven Familiar on turn 2, which drew them a card. And after that point, they did find Jaina a little bit quicker, which they didn't have in hand at the start of the game. They also, however, drew themselves a little bit closer to fatigue. And if they hadn't drawn the, 2 cards I believe they've drawn this game, off of 1 Bright-Eyed Scout and 1 Raven Familiar, I think are the only cards they've drawn, they would currently be ahead on fatigue.
So Pyrus is a good tool.
Pyrus is a very nice card to get.
As far as random legendary minions can go, 3 minions for the price of 1 does seem pretty good.
Doesn't Pyrus have like the most insane arena score ever? Like, it's one of the best arena cards possible.
I did not know that.
I think I remember reading that on like the Lightforge or something, because I don't play much arena these days, but I remember reading that and being very surprised because I wouldn't have guessed it would be such a valuable minion. I could be mistaken. As I found out on Ladder, though, recently, I'm sure Jacob will be very proficient at playing with these weird cards because I matched up against him, I believe it was last night.
Okay.
Where I think I was just playing a very standard, boring Malagos Druid or something like that. And he played on turn 3 or turn 2, I can't even remember the Malagos, Whirler Glider in his Druid deck, and I had to just think for a second, what does this card even do?
That was a couple days ago, I remember that actually.
Yeah. It was very, very odd indeed. I beat him on like turn 7, so I never got to find out what his deck did. But I was very curious, to say the least. As they do opt to use that card that I pointed out how valuable it could be in the Reckless Flurry. Setting at this point, I don't think that you actually have the ability to generate enough water elementals to win this game. But in response, Bulgaria say, water elementals? We are playing Ozrak.
We have Ozrak, and it has lifesteal. Ozrak with lifesteal. Not that that's particularly relevant to the game at the moment. Now, Spain kind of want to empty their hand so that they can play this Ungoro pack. Bulldozer plus the Rover would actually be able to clear up Ozrak, and that doesn't look too bad at all from where I'm sitting.
It's not bad, is it? You've seen both polymorphs, so preserving the Divine Shield on the Bulldozer could be good, because it means they can't then... Actually, even then, if they meteor it, they don't make a water elemental out of it, do they?
It's just the second Voodoo Doll that they're afraid of. And again, once that Voodoo Doll gets played, Beryllium Nullifier becomes unkillable.
Whatever Spain need to do, it does have to be relatively defensive, I think, because while Spain are obviously not pushing forward enough pressure to win the game through their own minions right now, they are going to be pushing forward enough pressure to make Fatigue not a viable game plan for Jacob whatsoever, because he will die very, very quickly to that Fatigue counter. So I think this is a necessitated play.
Alexstrasza, the bottom card in the deck. And utterly useless. Well, not utterly useless.
It's an 8/8 here.
It's an 8/8 that restores Spain's health by 4, but that's not really that relevant, I suppose.
And this does seem to me, from Bulgaria, to be a pretty unfashionable, I'll say, version of Control Mage. I don't want to call it wrong because, different tools for different jobs. Maybe they were trying to target a different meta. But I feel like there was a lot of discussion about Alexstrasza in Control Mage a little while ago. And a lot of players just kind of came to the conclusion that it's not that worth it anymore.
You always see these random lists around where there's Alexstrasza and Pyroblast in Big Spell Mage or something sneaky behind the scenes going on. Obviously, in open deck list format like this, you're never gonna run into that problem. But Alexstrasza just isn't looking so great. Maybe they planned on using it defensively against an aggro deck. I don't know. But it's going to have to be the Meteor. Still holding back that Voodoo Doll. Still, Bastudis still seems to be in a position where he does win in Fatigue. Just because they have so much more health than Jacob, but there's going to be a lot of pressure coming from Jacob's hand over the next 3 or 4 turns.
Ooh, there is. But, oh man, that low health total is really just going to come and bite them here. If they can gain up a bunch with Ziliax, that's kind of what they need to be doing here. But Bulgaria look like they are trying to preserve their resources. to fight back against that. But I think because of the fact they were using their resources so liberally in the early stages of the game, before Jaina even came down, like they played a polymorph right towards the start of the game, didn't they, to deal with, what was it? Was it the Lich King at the start of the game, or was it even earlier than that? They responded to one of the threats. Oh no, it was on the Darius Crowley. They polymorphed to Darius Crowley on turn 6, I think it was for them, before the Frostlich Jaina had even come down. And now, even though Darius Crowley could have done a bunch of damage at the start, I'm starting to think Bulgaria might have been a little bit too liberal with their removal cards here, got themselves in a situation where they just can't deal effectively enough with all these threats for Spain. They're still in a decent spot here, it's worth saying, but that Ziliax on its own, if it manages to find the value, could just run away with the game for Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, Ziliax, the amount of life you can get back from Ziliax is actually incredible once you magnetize it. I'm surprised to see Bastuda having to draw cards there with Bright-Eyed Scout, but I guess he has no choice. He needs to put some pressure on the board. He needs to end this game quickly. Flame Strike and Alexstrasza are the only cards in his hand that do anything whatsoever now.
So he, on this turn, he really wants to go Beryllium Nullifier and Hero Power down the 2/2. But I believe he took 2 fatigue on the last turn. So now he will be going up to 3 fatigue on this turn, I believe. Or did he take 1 on that turn? Either way, attack, ping. Would if he takes 2 or 3, it would be closing out the game at that point,
I think
right? So it doesn't matter. He would just die either way to attack, ping, plus the draw. So he cannot do that. I'm saying he wants to go Beryllium Nullifier because that would set up for playing the Ziliax magnetized on the Beryllium Nullifier, healing up for a huge amount of damage. But because of Bulgaria's decision to play the Bright-Eyed Scout, drawing them a card further into fatigue, Spain cannot do that. As they did get the Lyra about which we were talking.
Swamp King Dread rears his ugly head again. Not quite to the same impact as the game yesterday.
So I think they've calculated that they can survive at 1 health, right? After attack, ping, they would go to 8.
Well, in that case, it must
or
be.
if they have drawn, then yeah, they're just dead. But either way, it does look like Spain, after what looked to be an even closer series than again in the previous series that England, UK were playing, where they ended up losing. Spain here just not quite enough value, not quite enough life gain in the deck to stand up against their opponents.
As Bulgaria finally are able to make a water elemental for the first time in about 5
they took 1
turns. So it was 1. Okay, 2 now. Jacob, alive 1 more turn. The only way to start Lyra going off would be to shield block and draw a card. That doesn't seem like the right line.
But we could see Hero Power for Microbots magnetize the Ziliax onto one of those Microbots to bring it up to 4 attack.
Yep.
Then kill off the Water Elemental, I suppose, with all 3 of your minions then.
Unfortunately, then Bright-Eyed Scout would be able to, or Flame Strike, would be able to deal with the Ziliax, which is not what Spain wants, as Chile get their first win against Poland in the off-stream game. They're also 3-1, fighting to qualify for Phase 2 of the Hearthstone Global Games.
Time for a master plan.
And it is true how these late-game situations, despite a very long, slow, grueling game, it becomes so tense. Jacob has to be thinking, maybe there's some way we can gain enough lifesteal here to pull things back. But even after they go for the only play I think was available for them, it's just not going to come together.
Is there anything they can get from Chittering Tunneler? Like if they get the 1 mana gain 5 armor?
Yeah, Iron Hides, that's what I'm thinking, or Bring It On.
Tunneler into Bring It On or Iron Hides.
Dead Man's Hand. Tunneler into Dead Man's Hand.
Oh,
right?
Dead Man's Hand!
Yeah, I guess that's really what they're looking for. They would just be dead there, as I think they're 1 damage off dying right here anyway. And then even if they go Shield Block here, they gain 5, take 4, they're dead next turn. I think that's just it.
That's so unfortunate that they can't even attempt the Dead Man's Hand. Shield block into Iron Hide. It's just not going to happen.
It's not there. Yep, they're thinking, can we get enough health on this turn to pull it back? But another kaboom as the final insult to injury.
Would Lyra into shield block not have been the best play there? Maybe get...
Well, they might need the mana, right? Because... maybe.
Maybe get a Binding Heal or something? I don't know. Either way, Eventually, as predicted, right from the get-go, the big spell mage did take the win. It did get close, though. I thought that the warrior had won that as we went towards the end, as the mage seemed to have run out of resources entirely.
As we've seen this twice throughout the day, though, I think that's usually how it's going to be going in that matchup. It looks like the warrior's in a decent spot because the mage has a big break in their power because they don't do anything particularly strong, but then just that one last water elemental that sticks on the board because there isn't enough removal in the warrior deck to effectively fight back against those minions. It all falls apart. The mage took it once again, and Bulgaria, with another decent matchup coming up here, are looking to be in a great spot.
Yes, the score is 2-1. The next game is going to be Death Rattle Hunter versus Shadowwalk Shaman. But before that, after that very long game, we're going to give the players a moment to compose themselves one more time. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games, where Brazil are 2-1 against Spain. It's going to be Death Rattle Hunter versus Shadowwalk. I will get numbers right at some point.
I think you called them Brazil as well instead of Bulgaria.
I did call them Brazil. What
that
is
was
wrong
on
today?
every front.
Well, you know, it's part of the act, isn't it? Next up is going to be Death Rattle Hunter versus Shadowwalk Shaman. Death Rattle Hunter on Bulgaria's side. Shadowwalk Shaman for Spain. We saw this matchup the other way around a few minutes ago. Well, about an hour ago. That game went pretty long. And the Death Rattle Hunter took it quite easily. It got a little bit dodgy towards the end of the game, but they got there eventually.
Well, I mean, Bulgaria stabilized for a turn, which kind of was a cool play. We thought maybe they could take it back, but I don't think there was really ever a chance. It was just the perfect curve for the Hunter. They got the Shore, they cubed that Shore, they played a nice Katharina as well later on. It was just everything you're looking for in that matchup. They didn't even need an egg to take it at all, I don't think, because they were just going for curving out with Shore and the mid-game threats, which, like I said, is kind of what you're looking for a little bit more. Obviously, egg is good if you can get it down early on and start pumping out those Devil Saws, but it's the real mid-game powerhouse cards like Shore, Cube, Highmane, and Katharina that you're really looking for to just lock this game out.
Yeah, make no mistake, egg on 3, still pretty good. Egg into Terra Scale does a lot of work, but it's these bigger threats that we want to see cubed in this matchup. And it's an important one. Again, you mentioned before, Spain were close to qualifying last week, but they did end up losing. And I think the team were a little bit shaken. They want to qualify for the next phase of the tournament. They want it so badly. And Akawanda was saying to me, you know, we've composed ourselves, we're motivated. This week, we qualify. Well, Spain have a lot of work that they're going to need to do if they want to qualify this week.
They most assuredly are. And this hand they're starting off with, it's all right. You could consider keeping the cube, I suppose, but there's not really anything that you're looking to cube yet. Flanking Strike isn't even that bad if you already had a decent hand to snipe off some of those minions like Life Drinker, Manatide Totem, or Saronite Chain Gang, all of which have 3 health in the early turns. But I think you want to be looking a little bit more aggressively for your cards like Egg, maybe a Shore, Keleseth, if that is in Bulgaria's deck list, which I would have to imagine. Yep, it is, just for the real power plays.
Oh, as Spain pop up again. That was a hero portrait a second ago. There you go. There's Riku 97. And Friki appears as well. Look at that.
They're both appearing.
All right. Saronite and Grumble. Again, if Shadowwalk Shaman can do Shadowwalk Shaman things on turn 9, then maybe they have a much better chance. If they can get some early Glacial Shards, start the card draw going straight away. But on the other side, Bulgaria, they have that Shore that you were talking about.
Yeah, sure. But it's not going to be soloing this matchup because, again, obviously it needs other cards to make it work, right? It gives a buff to all your other minions, and when you don't really have any other minions outside of a measly, mossy horror, it's just not going to be doing enough in this matchup. So still for Freaky, he needs to find those eggs to go with the play dead, or I suppose I should say 1 egg. You don't want 2 eggs. You want egg, you want cube, any of that stuff, the Death Rattle synergy to really make this pop.
And for Spain, again, nothing else to think about in the first turn. It's just a question of the totem. And as you said when I asked this in the last game, there's not really a good reason not to totem in the first couple turns against a Hunter. The only poor result still just being the healing totem, which does weaken Volcano, but it's not something to be thinking about just yet.
Yeah, you don't even have it, do you, quite yet? And most of them are very, very good. Obviously, very nice, easy turns for both of these players here to get rolling. Manatee Totem is just, again, nice way to get the card draw rolling. And Bulgaria here, without a flanking strike to get rid of that, even if they wanted to go for a coin Houndmaster Shore, Chain Gang can protect that for the moment. Which means they have to go from where they're sat, I guess, for Hunter's Mark to take this out, lest Chain Gang come down and then it drawing cards every single turn. It's probably worth it to get rid of this right now.
Ooh, 2-0 for Chile versus Poland. Production team in my ear just pointing. I wasn't actually laughing, guys, but they're just telling me that's this not funny. It's obviously Poland are the production team's pick to win the tournament. And they are 3-1 again. It's a qualification match, not an elimination match. The loser of that game will still get to play again next week to try and earn their spot in the top 16.
As for Riku here, at least, Shadowwalk Shaman, despite being one of the more difficult decks currently in Hearthstone, proving to be nice and simple here at least. Just curving out with the best minion he can each turn, drawing through his cards, setting up his combo, because he's not a million miles off from potentially going for the combo after a Shudderwock is drawn. Because with Zola, again, he could go for copying another Saronite here to play it on another turn, maybe even getting to the point where he can bounce back some of these Saronite chain gangs with the Grumble, to the point where he only needs a Life Drinker and Shudderwock itself to just go for a nice early combo.
Now, unfortunately for Spain, again, there's just really not much that they can do. Lightning Storm is the only way to clear up Houndmaster Shore. Maybe that's a necessary evil this turn, as we've seen just how badly Houndmaster Shore can go off after... I mean, looking at Freaky's hand, he doesn't have the cube, but if he did, then Cube Coin Playdead would just drive this Houndmaster Shore. Well, it would do the same thing that the other team did in the previous game. So
it would win them the game, I dare say.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. So Spain may have to play the Lightning Storm here to get rid of it, but it feels so bad overloading for 2 next turn, wasting 3 mana this turn.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think you just want to set up for still focusing on your own win condition. Going for Zola while these Saronites are still on the board is very good, I think, because it's not like these slower matchups against Odd Warrior, Control Mage, maybe a Control Priest even, where you want to go Zola into Grumble to get a 1-mana Zola back to your hand, to bounce back a Shudderwock to your hand just in case the effect fails, and these Shudderwocks don't bounce themselves back to your hand. But this matchup, I don't believe you have that liberty. You need to play a fair bit quicker, just throwing down these minions to try and contest the board, even if you are leaving yourself vulnerable to a Mossy Horror from your opponent.
And Mossy Horror it shall be, by the looks of things, as Bulgaria play that out, start dealing the damage to the face. Still got a handful of playdeads and nothing to play them on. That could be somewhat awkward. However, Rexar will fix any of Freaky's value problems over the next few turns.
Yeah, value is definitely not the problem for Freaky. It's speed that he is worrying about. He needs to be getting to the finish line as quick as he possibly can, because if he doesn't go for the quick beasts through likes of Stealth, Charge, maybe a Tundra Rhino, Life Drinkers, anything that threatens his opponent nice and quickly, if he doesn't hit those, he could be getting himself into the position where he doesn't finish off the game quickly enough. Volcanoes, Lightning Storms, Healing Rains could just stall out the game for too long. And so there, he's by that metric, Freaky is saying, I don't want to be playing this at all. It's not good on this turn. I want to preserve my minions rather than just trade them into a Grumble, which feels awful. So he's going nice and quick here, getting that consistent damage through to the face. And as soon as Riku doesn't develop a big threat or goes wide with low health minions, then you slam the Deathstalker Rexar.
Riku looks very happy at the moment. He just started laughing about something. I can't quite work out what.
Well, at the moment, he doesn't look particularly happy. I'd say he looks ambivalent at best.
Oh, sorry, not Riku.
Oh, Freaky.
Freaky.
Oh, right.
He was just laughing.
Oh, he looks over the moon. Just look at that guy.
Well, now he doesn't. Now the moment's passed.
Oh, right, sorry.
Now he actually looks concerned. This is a spectrum of emotions we're getting from Freaky.
Yeah, I'd say that's more of a grimace than a smile at this point.
Because he realized, oh, our position's not actually that good. Time to stop laughing. For Spain, though, with Life Drinker in hand, Grumble played, Saranites played, all they need is Shudderwock, and they might just win this game within the next few turns.
They might, but this is really quick play from Bulgaria. I agree this is probably the correct way to go, because whilst Shaw is on the board, you want to get that value from Shaw. You want to try and make sure that you are getting the damage through to face rather than letting up on the offensive with Deathstalker Rexar. But that was just instantly slammed by Freaky, and from pretty much every other team in the global games, we're seeing much more conservative play, just taking their time, discussing their options, and making sure they're not missing anything.
They've slowed down now. Now it's just the attack sequencing, and they don't seem as sure what they're doing. I mean, I've got to admit, I keep staring at Riku's hand, at the Lightning Storms, at the Healing Rain. He does seem to have the answers that he needs to win this one.
Really unsure as to whether he should be trading in with the Houndmaster Shaw here. He's thinking, if he goes double Lightning Storm, do I want to get this through to face? If he goes Volcano, do I want to be trading here at all? And with Electra picked up, I think this should be... Oh, I was going to say a very easy Electra Lightning Storm turn, but it's not quite that simple, is it?
Well, he could, if he's going to go with that, he could totem first, again, try and get that spell damage totem.
But with 2 Lightning Storms in hand, maybe Riku needs to think, I want to save this Electra to go with the Healing Rain, because that's more valuable.
Right.
Would he rather have a Lightning Storm and a Healing Rain left in hand, or Electra Healing Rain, just for the maximum heal?
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Freaky isn't going to go very wide with his Hunter boards that often. This is probably the one time that's really going to happen. The Hunter tends to go big more than it goes wide. So Healing Rain does look like a more valuable tool, and having an extra one of those could be great later. However, hovered over the Electro.
It really is a difficult decision, because Electra Healing Rain, what does that really do? You're healing up for maybe 8 or 9 more health over the course of the game. That's not the way you're losing. You're not losing to the Hunter hero power chipping you down. You're probably going to lose to a big burst when your opponent plays something like the Katharina Winter Wisp.
Sadly, the Shaw survived, so Riku can't put the Acolyte into the Mossy Horror and have that survive. Shaw had to die there, but for now, Riku's face is safe as King Crush picked up by Bulgaria. Rexar will allow this Mossy Horror to go face, and then King Crush is almost lethal next turn. Spain needs to heal now.
And now for Bulgaria, the big question is, do you want to deal 2 damage to the face, or have a Zombeast? In the vast majority of cases, you take the Deathstalker Rexar Zombeast hero power even when you're getting kind of close to lethal, because maybe your opponent has Healing Rain, maybe they have Life Drinker, maybe you generate a Charger or a Stealth Minion off of the Deathstalker Rexar. You still very possibly generate more damage anyway. I think the play is to go for the Zombeast hero power.
Quickly.
If at all.
Bulgaria disagrees. They're just going to go ahead and play Saronite Chain Gang and get as much minion pressure on the board now, setting up for King Crush lethal next turn.
Fair enough. They are putting their opponent on having exactly Healing Rain on this turn, aren't they?
Yeah, and there's not even that much mana available for Riku this turn. Overloaded for 4 crystals, that's 5 remaining. So the Healing Rain plus Totem, Healing Rain plus Earthshock, none of it looks great.
And this is a style of play that I saw not with Death Rattle Hunter, but with Spell Hunter, Copa America from Cosmo, where he was really consistently delaying Deathstalker Rexar as much as possible, getting that steady shot hero power, being very aggressive, and playing it just as a final hurrah to push his opponent over the edge, maybe with a charging Bittertide Hydra or whatever extra damage he could get. It was a very cool style of play. I'm not certain it's going to work out here for Freaky, because again, there is that counterplay with Healing Rain, at which point Freaky will definitely hope that he, or would have preferred to have had the Deathstalker Rexar hero power. But here's Spain thinking they don't even have to go for the Healing Rain, because with the spell damage, They don't die to anything.
Nope, King Crush going to get slammed down. That Kellerseth was drawn a little bit too late. If this had the Kellerseth buff, it would just be lethal. 1 health for Spain. No Electra to play with the Healing Rain now, and no way of clearing... Well, they have to Volcano, right? They have a Volcano Healing Rain.
Well, they could go Saronite. They don't have to go for Volcano because they've already seen Mossy Horror.
Yeah.
They've already seen 1 Flanking Strike. There's no other charges. They've seen Houndmaster Shore. They've seen 1 Hunter's Mark as well. There's really not much that can actually kill off the Saronites. I suppose it's Cube Playdead that you're afraid of at that point, aren't you? And even then, you wouldn't die because it would only be 8 damage going to face.
Yeah, but then how do you deal with that board?
Fair enough.
You're definitely not dealing with the Cube and the King Crushes and then the other 2.
Yeah, but then you lose to that no matter what, don't you? You're never... Oh, no, wait, because you
clear off the
Volcano.
King Crush.
Yeah? Okay, maybe.
So I think it may have to be Volcano plus Healing Rain here.
It doesn't feel great, but you've brought me around to it.
It's still a horrible position to be in, but again, all it really takes for Riku to win this is drawing Shadow Walk. Like next turn, just go Life Drinker Saronite, the turn after that, Shadow Walk, and the infinite win condition can get started. I don't believe I've seen Shadow Walk actually win a game in the traditional sense recently. At least not in one that we've casted.
It's been a while, hasn't it? They're usually just winning through board control. Locking out the aggro decks, because there haven't been many times that Shadowwalk has been matched up against the control lineups, because usually if you're bringing a full control lineup, you ban Shadowwalk pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think you've probably got to take Vicious Fledgling here. If you can get Stealth or Charge, it feels real good.
Is it stupid that I'm thinking about Arthas with a double Playdead?
I guess you can get some good stuff. Frostmourne, Death Coil, Death and Decay just for extra damage isn't bad.
A lot of them are bad, though. I think the Fledgling is better the vast majority of the time.
Yeah, because if you don't get something good off the Arthas, you played a 4-mana 2/2, which is really bad.
And now is Spain's opening to get back onto this board. So again, that Saronite plus Life Drinker play I was talking about last turn, I think they still have to go with that here. Next turn, they get 2 chances to draw Shadowwalk, thanks to the natural draw and also the Farsight. It's Riku's only real chance to win. Or
just it's a win condition that was kind of just handed to them, right, by Bulgaria. They're set up for killing off their opponent with King Crush. Had 2 weaknesses. Obviously, it had the weakness of their opponent maybe healing up, because they were still at a decent life total after King Crush came down. But because their opponent was at 9 instead of 8, as we saw, the healing rain wasn't even necessary going into the King Crush turn because they just didn't die. And so maybe if Riki had taken a slightly slower play, at least in the immediate, and gone for an earlier Deathstalker Rexar, he could have got the necessary amount of zombies to win this game.
Riku went Saronite and the Totem as well. And the Totem is great, obviously, drawing some cards, but I don't believe a Life Drinker has actually been played yet from Riku.
Nope.
So it's not setting up for this Shadowwalk lethal. Then again, he can start by playing the Shadowwalk and then go Life Drinker, 1-mana Shadowwalk, and then win the game from there, I suppose. It's not actually vital to play the Life Drinker first.
No, yeah, you could easily play it after. And your chance of drawing Shadowwalk off the top, I don't think you need to be that optimistic. Even if you don't get Shadowwalk as the very next card, I think Riku is still in a pretty respectable spot here, actually.
We keep seeing the Shaman stabilize for a short amount of time and then the Hunter come back.
Because we do have, as a potential, Devilsaur Egg double play dead on this turn if Bulgaria did want to go for it. It develops a really nice big board. You've already seen a bunch of removal from your opponent.
Are they hero powering last?
They are hero powering last. I mean, they just wanted to do the more important stuff first because this is incorrect, but the rope was starting to burn, and I think making the making the Devilsaurs is more important, and you can just take a random Zombeast. Even if it gives you the leftmost option each time, whatever. It's not that bad. It's more important you make the 5/5s.
He's burst out laughing again. What is Freaky finding so funny this game?
Well, he knows that he messed that up. Like, I think he made the best of the bad situation. When the rope was burning, this was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But the right way to do it overall is to say, okay, I'm always playing tracking, so I'm going to do that first. Then I'll press the hero power.
Was it the fact that he actually managed to get a minion with charge? Is that why he's so happy?
That probably helped, yeah. Because that's now, what, a 5 attack charger?
Yes.
That's not bad at all. I'd rather take a Leroy with 6 attack for 5 rather than 5 for 6, but not bad at all.
Well, you have a lot. You have much, much better health. It's a good payoff.
You're not wrong. I mean, I would play this minion in my deck, make no mistake, if I was allowed to do that.
Okay, is this going to be Shadowwalk? No, it's going to be the second Life Drinker. Okay, a little bit of healing. That's not so bad. Do we have to see Earthshock Volcano here? That's horrible.
It is pretty Miz, which is why I think we're going to be seeing instead. Life Drinker Ooze, you're still setting up for that hero power off the top, for that Shadowwalk off the top. And because you haven't played Volcano, and Riku has kept the Mana Tide alive, he has 2 draws for Shadowwalk, and he isn't overloaded, so he can actually play the Shadowwalk on this turn, and very possibly just win if he draws it.
Amazing.
Still nowhere in sight, though.
The cube, the turn after both playdeads were just played. That's unfortunate.
As the zombies, that would allow you to play the cube as well, right?
That's right.
It's a death rat on
Zombies,
the inside.
then the cube is discounted by 2. You play the cube, you play dead. Then both of these zombies have charge again. That would be 15 burst damage. That would have been lethal if played this turn. However, it wouldn't be because these 5/5s wouldn't be on the board.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit messier than that.
Yeah, I still think it was the right play that Freaky went for, to go for the play deads on the last turn. Try and force your opponent to still have that stall so they don't just lose on the spot. And it's not necessarily a given that the Hex, that the cube does come down for Bulgaria, because, as I kind of mentioned in the slip of the tongue there, the Hex could come down as a very respectable answer to that carnivorous cube. And so he's going for it on the egg, because here he's saying, I want to play this just as a 5-mana 5/7. This is not that bad. And if the Hex does come down now, it's 1 less minion he destroyed with his own cube.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty smart.
And Glacier Shard drawn off the top from Riku is not the card he's looking for. 9 cards remaining in the deck. That Shadowwalk is there somewhere.
I wonder.
But where?
I don't know. Nor does he.
Well, for Riku 97 on this turn, we could see a clearing up of 10 damage, at least, just in terms of the minions on board.
Yeah.
And then Life Drinker Hex hero power. Looks all right, doesn't it? You've seen a King Crush. You're probably not afraid of dying this turn.
Could even just play everything, couldn't they? Like Life Drinker and the Glacier Shard.
Yeah,
Hex.
sure. That makes your Shadowwalk better if you draw it off the top as well.
Makes Hagatha slightly worse, though, if that is drawn. Like, Hagatha into Glacial Shard at least starts the spell generation going. Given how dry Spain's hand is getting, maybe that's something to consider. No.
Yeah, I like it more, because now they're not dying to zombies with charge anywhere near as consistently.
All it would take is 1 Terra Scale Stalker, though, wouldn't it? Oh no, sorry, it wasn't the charge minion that got eaten up by the cube, was it?
No, yeah, it was just the egg. Oof, more stealth available for Freaky, but he's got to start playing them if he actually wants to get the damage through for a turn. Because in the super slow matchup, stealth can act like a pseudo charge. But when your opponent plays Volcanoes to deal with it, they could just win the game on the very next turn. It's an entirely different beast. It is literally an entirely different beast as well. Oh, still not there for Spain.
This is just no good now, because if Volcano has to be played, that's overload. So next turn, if Shadowwalk's drawn, it's still not lethal.
It doesn't have to be played. They could go for Sandbinder, draw the 1 Glacial Shard that's left, and then Hex, and they're not dead on board.
They'd need to hero power as well and try and get Taunt Totem, because that Fledgling gets a Wind Fury.
Yes.
A lot of the time. Hero power...
30% of the time.
Sorry. Well, I mean, hero power can get other minions with Adapt, other minions with Charge. Again, we're in that same position where Life Drinker's lethal.
No matter what you do, it doesn't feel great. I definitely agree with you.
Why clear the Life Drinker off of the board? Why is that something they'd want to do?
Oh, they're setting up for Volcanoes clear off.
Oh,
Because I think this is the only way to get enough health off of the board. I agree, if they were just going for the Hex and praying, that would have been an odd way to go about it, but there is Katharina Winterwisp. That is a huge amount of pressure, even with the Deathstalker, oh sorry, even with the King Crush already going from the deck. I think that's got to be a pretty easy Katharina here. And now for Spain, I think their only real out is Shudderwock off the top.
No, they've got 8 mana. They played the Volcano.
Oh, they overloaded last turn, of course.
So Sandbinder, if there is still a Glacial Shard in the deck, then as Freaky already waving the Bulgarian flag.
Getting a bit ahead of himself, as we could see Taunt Totem and then Glacial Shard from the deck. Do they even have a Glacial Shard left in the deck?
Honestly, I'm not certain.
I think we've only seen one.
We are about to find out, though, as I'm sure Spain know, and if they don't know, they're going to realize it's the only way they survive. So, Glacial Shard on one of these minions and put up a taunt on the other. You're just laughing at the flag.
Yeah, it's good to see a bit of national pride, isn't it? It reminds me of kind of England during the World Cup where, you know, we did one thing, it was, you know, kind of impressive, and we just exploded with a torrent of extreme patriotism, as Freaky is here. But, you know, to his credit, this would mean that he just advances through to the top 16 in the global games, which is, I suppose, worth a little flag wave at least.
I agree. As now Riku is having to decide whether it's better to totem and try and get a taunt totem, or play the Acolyte and try and guarantee the draw of the Shudderwock next turn. He goes for the Acolyte. The Zombeast in hand could give... Oh no, Katharina's not a beast.
It's not a beast.
So it's going to have to be discovered a Zombeast that has 3 damage or more. None of these deal damage.
Or so you go for the Raptor Hatchling, because then... Oh no, wait, you could only get the Tundra Rhino off the first effect. You probably still take it anyway. Echo Rush
it's not charge.
Do it.
It's not charge.
Oh, so there's still the draw for Shudderwock. And Freaky here is going to be thinking, oh boy, am I going to be looking a little bit of a fool right about now? It's also, I suppose, worth mentioning, Shudderwock would not kill their opponent on the turn it's played if they go for the trades here.
No, but the 2 Glacial Shards would go off. There'd be 6 healing.
Shudderwock doesn't definitely win the turn it's played. I agree, it just very likely wins on the turn it's played. Because again, Shudderwock could just fail. It could not bounce back a Shudderwock to the hand.
Hagatha, not the draw that Riku is wanting, though. 4 cards in the deck. Shudderwock is a 1 in 4 here. And I think that is the only card left that gives Riku any sort of a chance at surviving.
And here it is. It all comes down to this for Riku. He gets the MCT. He cannot play that in combination with Hagatha, cannot kill off the Savannah Highmane. I think that is just simply going to be G to the G.
Yeah, there's no way they can... like, the Hagatha only gains them 5 health. They're dead to 2 attacks. They can't deal with the 2/2s that come out of the Highmane. That's it. Freaky not quite looking like the fool for waving the Bulgarian flag.
Cautiously bring his flag back up to wave it once again.
I have enjoyed watching Freaky smiling throughout this game, honestly, it has to be said. Commiserations, though, to Spain. That's 2 weeks in a row. They've started at 3-0 in the Hearthstone Global Games, and now they find themselves 3-2, desperately needing a win next week to survive and keep going in the Hearthstone Global Games.
And I think they're in with a pretty good shot of doing so, right, as they do finally throw it down. Such a strong team. We were talking about them in terms of star power, as, again, one final time, Freaky throwing up the colours there for Bulgaria. But they are not only famous players, the Spanish team, they are also very proficient players. We know Dalesom and Akawanda in particular, members of SK Gaming, very, very accomplished Hearthstone players, very strong Hearthstone players. But even Riku and Jacob as well, they're pretty popular as well from what I see. Strong ladder grinders as well. So I think while they are on the verge of defeat and being eliminated, I've still got high hopes for Team Spain.
Akawanda has been consistently performing at tour stops recently. There aren't enough good things we can say about that team. As we take one more look at the matchup that we just watched, there you go. Akawanda was able to get that win with the Death Rattle Hunter versus the Shudderwock Shaman, but as Freaky was able to win the same matchup the other way around later on, that sealed the deal for Bulgaria. Spain unfortunately unable to get any of the other wins. And hey, it was a tough series for Spain going through with unfavoured matchups all the way through, apart from the one that they won, obviously.
I did have Bulgaria pegged as being the #1 in this series because of, well, exactly these 3 matchups. I thought it would go exactly this way, as it did end up going. I have to say as well, I am somewhat glad. I am willing to accept that this may make TikTok unfollow me on Twitter, but I think that's more than enough control mage for one day.
Well, 2 series in a row. We have seen a lot of that deck, given that those 2 games have been longer than all of the other games today put together, probably. But there we go. Looking back at the start of this series, this Zoo overwhelmed the Malygos Druid far too quickly for Dalsum to react in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, very nicely played by Django as well. I liked what we saw. You know, he focused on what were the key cards in that matchup. Soul Infusion, Doubling Imp, you play it as quick as possible, and you very rarely lose from that spot.
Then there was this Shaman game where, as you can see, Bulgaria did make Akawanda sweat for a little bit there, able to clear most of the board, freeze up the King Crush. Things were starting to look as though Akawanda was in trouble, but there you go. Eventually, the Life Drinker Lethal off of the zombies did the job.
And here was the mammoth of the series in the Control Mage up against the Odd Warrior. It was looking a little bit better for Spain in this series than it was for UK against South Korea in the same matchup earlier on today. But in the end, Bulgaria did just have that little bit too much value, too many threats pushing forward, and the life gain wasn't there for Jacob. Even though I would say for Bulgaria, with this obvious mistake being a pretty funny moment in the series, I still think they could have maybe played it a little bit better, played a little bit more slowly with their threats. They did end up taking it, and it was a cool series to watch, even if it didn't go perfectly.
Finally, the Death Rattle Hunter on the other side versus the Shaman. Again, Shaman using up these Lightning Storms with Electras, trying to grapple this board back, but sadly, it was not good enough. They weren't able to draw their Shadowwalk. Shadowwalk in the bottom 3 cards of the deck. My heart does go out to Riku a little bit there.
It does indeed. Gave it all he's got, and I think he played that very well. He knew the exact breakpoints that he needed to be afraid of, down to the 1 health. He, instead of healing up on the turn King Crush could come down, which his opponent was pretty clearly setting up to do so, he cleared off the board because he knew 9 is in fact a little bit bigger than 8, and he therefore would not be dying to it.
Well, it sounds as though we are going to get to have a little chat with Django from Team Bulgaria and see what he thinks about their win. Congratulations, Django. That was a bit of a stomp of a series, if I do say so.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now?
I mean, we qualified to the top 16, so you tell me, how could we feel about it?
You can feel great. I think you should feel fantastic. Are you going to make me answer all of the questions that I ask you, or do you want to tell us about your lineup? Big Spell Mage seems to have somehow made its way back recently, whereas a lot of the time it's been Aggro Mage. What were you planning?
I mean, we compare lineups and look at all of the decks. Like week 4, we were expecting more like aggro decks, so we thought like Big Spell Mage might be good. But week 4, actually, we didn't get that many aggro decks. But then we look at Spain's lineup, and they were full control lineup almost. And since we were more like aggro deck previous week, and we thought that they will just keep the same lineup, so Big Spell Mage was better there because Tempo Mage might get countered easily.
Fair enough. We were talking a little bit earlier about how you have playoffs coming up this weekend. Did that make preparing for Hearthstone Global Games a little bit trickier this week?
I mean, I actually almost didn't help at all this week to my teammates. Like, they did most of the job this week. Like, 27 was decklist submission for HGG, 28 was decklist submission for playoffs. Today, 29th, we are playing at HGG. Tomorrow, I'm traveling. And also, with all of this, there are preparations and also ladder finish. So it's really stacked. It's really stacked.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you was just about communication in teams, because I've been asking a lot of the different teams about how they approach the communication in those very difficult games. Specifically in the Control Mage game up against the Odd Warrior, where it's very difficult.
Don't mention that misplay.
I won't mention the misplay, don't worry. I wasn't going to mention that. We were trying to figure out what master plan you were going for instead of just misclicking. But I wanted to ask you, how do you assign roles? Is there one player who just controls the deck no matter what and has authority over everyone else? Or is it more democratic and you hear everyone's point of view?
I mean, we are everyone sharing our opinions. Like, someone can miss some play, or other player can see it. So it's always good to hear everyone in the team. And we always have one person following the decks, tracking. So that's very important since deck trackers are not allowed. And yeah, that's basically it.
Well,
We are all brainstorming there.
You know what, Django? Your team have done a great job this week of preparing. You've all done a great job in playing. Congratulations. We'll see you again next week and then again for the top 16. Good luck in playoffs.
Thank you.
Just got cut off there at the end there, didn't he?
He did indeed. I'm sure it was going to be riveting what he was going to say.
Well, there you go. That is Bulgaria versus Spain done. I believe next up, Dengaskin and Lorinda are going to be bringing you Norway versus the Russian Federation. Both of these teams on 2-2. So loser of that game is going to be out. And they are... That's a scary match.
That is two very, very stacked teams. I believe last year everyone was kind of predicting Russian Federation to be the best team in the global games. And this year a lot of people were predicting Norway to be the best team in the global games. So kind of like the old guard up against the new. It's going to be a very good one and you definitely don't want to miss it.
No, you don't at all. The Russian Federation versus Norway coming up.